Oh man, remember Predator, guys? Remember that badass 80s film with Arnie getting down and dirty in the jungle with one of the most iconic, ruthless, terrifying movie monsters ever? That movie was awesome. I always wondered why we never got another one, but hey, just like with Top Gun, it's been 35 years, and thanks to Dan Trachtenberg, we finally have it. Okay, I know I'm being unfair. Prey is not the first Predator film since the original. Hell, it's not even the first good follow-up. Predator 2 is a pretty cool movie, and you know what? I like Predators, even if it's a bit derivative of the first film and expands on the lore in ways which I find to be unnecessary. But, and in this regard, there truly is no competition, Prey is unquestionably the best Predator film since the original. In fact, ready for another hot take from Griffin? Prey is the best Predator film. Well, maybe. When I stack Prey up against the original Predator, I could go either way in terms of which one is my favorite. It kind of depends on the day. Now hold on, I know you're aiming your triangular laser crosshairs at my forehead right now, but before you pulled the trigger, recognize that I'm not a threat, neither is Prey. The original Predator is an iconic film and one of the best action movies ever made. Nothing's ever gonna take that away from Predator. I even did a video like 2 weeks ago about what makes the Predator one of the great movie monsters, and without giving too much away, because you should really go watch that video. It's so damn good. Check it out. A lot of what makes it scary was done perfectly in that first film, but then it kind of got diluted in most of the sequels, culminating in, and I hate to do my boy Shane Black dirty like this, the absolute wretched depiction of this character in 2018's The Predator. That's why Prey isn't just a welcome return to form and something that people really have been clamoring for ever since the original film, or I guess since the Predators gave Danny Glover the pistol at the end of Predator 2, but something which stands tall alongside the original film. It's the first continuation of the franchise since the original to actually understand the Predator, to fully capitalize on what makes it work, to deliver what we expect from these movies, and to bring the Predator franchise roaring into 2020's cinema. So once again, stick around while we dive into everything that makes Prey the most worthy Predator film since the original, and all the things it adds to the franchise, including Naru, who might be just as much of a badass as Dutch from the original film. I mean, they're different, but they're still badass in their own ways. I mean, she took on the Predator all on her own 300 years ago, long before she had AG1 by Athletic Greens to give her the extra energy, endurance, and brain health necessary for success. I'm lucky to live in today's world where I've been able to include AG1 in my own self-care routine. It's a nutritional drink that is lifestyle friendly. Doing a keto diet? No sugar? No problem. Vegan? All the ingredients are vegan friendly too. It's a daily micro habit. 1 scoop, 1 minute, once a day. And you'll absorb key nutrients and vital adaptogens such as vitamin B6, magnesium, and green tea extract that will help you feel your best every day. Take it from me, I have been drinking AG1 for about a year now, and ever since I started, my AG1 minute has given me an increased energy and mental focus day to day that simply wasn't there before. I've been recommending AG1 to my friends and family, and now I'm recommending it to you. So tap my link to get a 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D3, K2, and 5 travel packs free with your first purchase. This is an incredible deal, and look, you can't put a price tag on your own health, so take advantage of this. Click the link in the description below, and thank you so much to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this video. Let's start with the obvious. Prey is the best looking Predator film. And I know, most of you were probably saying, so what? But look, that first John McTiernan film actually did look pretty good for the time, and I don't hate the look of Predators. And you know what? Those AVP films, we're not even gonna touch on them and how illegible they are. I mean, you literally can't see a damn thing in the entire film, and God, that Shane Black movie just looks like ass. Oh, so really, the bar for visual storytelling here was pretty low. And I agree, it's a cheap, easy ask for a movie made today to generally look better than one made in the 80s. But here's the thing, Prey went so goddamn hard when it absolutely did not need to in the slightest. Cinematographer Jeff Cutter went miles above the Call of Duty in making the Great Plains, and specifically the Great Plains as imagined to have looked like 300 years ago, feel like a cinematic world of the film's creation despite being a very much real place on Earth. The openness, the inherent eeriness of such a place, especially in a pre-industrialized setting, is palpable. It differs from Predator, obviously, in terms of the time period it is set in, but also in its vastness. Predator feels almost claustrophobic in the jungle. Prey makes you feel wide open, exposed, able to be picked off at any moment. In both films, there's nowhere it seems like the Predator can't get to, but Prey makes you feel like even in the most open spaces, with any amount of distance between the Predator and its victim, it'll still get them. And for the most part, it does. That being said, there is real beauty to the landscape, natural beauty, ranging from large vistas shot on location in Alberta to intimate caves. The emphasis on realism is important because Prey is first and foremost a survival story, as alluded to by the title of the film. It needed to make us feel the simultaneous harshness and beauty of the environment in order to feel the power and intensity of our protagonist Naru's turbulent journey through it. More on that later, which Cutter and Trachtenberg excel at, and which they accomplished on a more confined and claustrophobic level with something like 10 Cloverfield Lane. It's all about how the environment can be used to reflect the struggle of the character, and how that character uses the environment to their advantage. With both of these films, our characters are survivors, and their respective journeys are ones of overcoming the elements, overcoming their physicality to outsmart their opponent, because their will is stronger. Their ingenuity is an asset their opponents don't respect or share. Prey is a stunning film, and the cinematography is very deliberately calling attention to itself to the elements I just mentioned, giving it a visceral edge that I'd argue almost every other film in the franchise lacks. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but still. And we get this combination of a Roger Deakins shot film mixed with The Revenant, and again, it was absolutely not required by the filmmakers, but holy fucking shit, they went there anyway. And it works. This is an elemental film. This is a movie that makes you feel the environment on every single level. And all of that has the added benefit of helping Prey be the Predator film that rediscovers what makes the Predator work. It's actually scary again. The Predator is once again, for the first time since the original movie, played as a proper movie monster. It represents the oppressors, the colonizers, those who don't respect the land, the people, their relationship with it, and an ecosystem built upon survival and respect. It hunts for sport. It hunts to prove it's the apex, the dominant species, even if the ecosystem it comes to has nothing and wants nothing to do with it. It represents an imbalance in nature, an invasive species, which Europeans basically were when they colonized the New World, set against the backdrop of nature's battleground. There's actually a presence of mystery to it as well, an air of uncertainty of when or how or even if this invader will strike that adds to the suspense. I think even Predator 2 lost a bit of that, and any of the movies between that and Prey missed the mark entirely, either by over-explaining the Predator species' motivations and actions or by trying to humanize it. That first movie, for all of its excellence and its action trappings, is also kind of a horror movie during the times where the mercenaries are being hunted down and killed off one by one in the most horrific ways possible. Prey finally gives us that again, and more importantly, it pulls the same kind of trick of tension that the 2014 Godzilla does by building up to a big reveal of the Predator piece by piece. Again, he's under this cloak most of the time, at least in the first half of the film, so even when we see him, we don't see him until the tension has reached a breaking point, and we need to see him. The film doesn't give us some random-ass giant space battle beginning or bombarded with non-stop "Predator kills people" scenes. It's a drip that grows to a slow trickle, to a steady leak, to a burst dam. I credit Trachtenberg for that. He knows how to turn tension and build up into a sensory assault on an audience's anticipation. It works for fans of the franchise, but I have to imagine that if someone is going into Prey with no knowledge of the Predator, they'll be terrified. In fact, that's probably the best thing I can say about Prey, is that it works just as good as a standalone film detached from the Predator franchise as it does a prequel to that franchise. And that's what the Predator is supposed to be. Guess we're lucky that set pieces involving the Predator have never looked better either, huh? Yeah, oh yeah, we're going there. This movie has some of the most memorable, creative, and most importantly, diverse action sequences ever boasted by a Predator film. Everyone is rightly talking about the Ash Forest as perhaps being the Predator-centric set piece of the entire franchise, but I mean, the film even manages to give us a gripping sequence where Naru is facing off against a bear before she ever goes head-to-head with a Predator to begin with. That whole chase is a nightmare of tension as is. It's a moment in the film where you seriously think that maybe this could be it for the heroine, that she's gotten in way over her head, and then the Predator shows up and absolutely mutilates this grizzly bear in a matter of seconds. It doesn't just raise the stakes of the sequence, it raises the stakes of the Predator. It shows that there's no opponent, nothing nature can throw at it that it can't at least make a match with on a sheer strength and physicality level. The perversion of nature, upsetting of the natural ecosystem is played as even more horrifying because when this shit happens in nature, a predator hunting and killing its prey, it's violent. There's no filter, and it's some of the bloodiest stuff out there in the world. Maybe it's slightly scary, but we just tend to excuse it because it's nature, right? Like, that's just what happens. It's nature's way. But when you insert a humanoid invasive creature, an alien, into the equation who kills for sport, it stops becoming natural and becomes more horrifying, especially when it disrupts the food chain. Everything in Earth's ecosystem is hunting out of necessity, out of survival, and the predator just sort of comes down to Earth and studies the food chain in an effort to discover who is the apex and, for sport, see if he can dethrone them. And that's sort of how colonizers treated Native Americans, hence the fur traders being a reflection of the predator himself. They were asserting their dominance over another group of people just so they could, I guess, prove themselves, invade their land, be at the top, impose their rule, their lifestyle, their beliefs, everything onto a new world. It was a hubris thing. It was thinking that they know better and that they're just going to rule this land that people have been living on for decades, hundreds of years. It was never a survival thing. And when survival is overridden by ego, survival will always win out. And that's really the core of this film, but more on that later. When Naru reunites with members of the Comanche who treat her with hostility, we get a similarly brutal, ruthless sequence where none of these guys, who, keep in mind, are the best of the best humanity has to offer in terms of warriors in this ecosystem, stand a chance against the creature. We get to see some of the Predator's most iconic weapons get reintroduced, particularly its laser targeting projectile, which will be very important in a bit. And it's ruthless, man. I mean, it really has you on the edge of your seat the entire time. And that's where Prey's other not-so-secret weapon comes in. Amber Midthunder and her excellent performance, her career-igniting performance as the equally excellent character of Naru. Now, see, when I said Naru was perhaps as badass as Dutch, that wasn't clickbait. I think it's genuinely competitive between them. And you know what? I'm thinking that the wind is leaning in her direction. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, keep in mind, she had to take on a predator 250 years earlier than Dutch did, at a time where she had no technology at all, where everything the predator was doing, the cloak, the laser-guided projectile, was completely foreign to humanity. Yes, a big part of that original film is that Dutch has to learn to set his brawn aside and utilize his brain instead in order to defeat the predator, which is how Naru wins the day too. They both have to outsmart it, not outfight it. but Naru is entirely restricted to her intuition and knowledge of the environment. Dutch, at least, understands the basic concepts behind how the Predator's technology works. He's able to deduce that the Predator detects its enemies based on their thermal signature, an idea that doesn't exist in Naru's time, although I do like the moment earlier in Prey where they pay tribute to that element of the original film. Her remark about the wounded member of their tribe and how they have to keep him cold to stop him from bleeding out. Oh, he's better off cold and uncomfortable, but alive to see another day, than warm, comfortable, and dead. In that original film, if Dutch doesn't submerge himself in that cold mud, he's dead. Naru ultimately isn't someone I would even classify as a warrior. She doesn't have the backing of her tribe as a hunter. She's had to learn everything she knows on her own, to become resourceful and hone her survival skills on her own, which we see in the opening sequences of the film. Naru is first and foremost a survivor. She is forced to use nothing but her own natural ingenuity and her agility to win her fight against the Predator. All of that is what makes her perhaps the franchise's ultimate badass. Remember in my other Predator video? This is another plug to go watch that amazing video, but I digress. When I say that these movies work best when the monster is just a monster, and it's the way in which he affects and challenges the human characters that allows a writer to find something more in the story, that's what allows Prey to be a really compelling version of this tale, and where Naru really gets to shine. The plot of the film is Naru and her people encountering the Predator, and Naru needing to figure out how to take it down. The plot is a build up to Naru tricking the Predator into shooting itself with its own weapon, which is brilliant, by the way. Absolutely one of the most satisfying climaxes in any Predator film, if not the most satisfying. But the story is about Naru and the Comanche affirming that this is their land, and this is their community, and the culture is theirs, and will survive anyone, or anything, that tries to bring an end to either, or to take what is theirs away from them. Those vistas that the cinematography so vividly captures, those gorgeous landscapes and forests, their atmosphere added to by the fog, the mud, the elements, all make up this hunting ground that the Comanche are familiar with, that they know by heart, and that the Predator has to learn. In a way, Naru's journey is one of becoming familiar with the elements, learning to live among them and not dominate them. She respects nature and its dominion over her people, and much of the first half of the film is her coming to understand, foster a relationship with, grow, and come into her own as a hunter, a member of the tribe. This is something the Predator also has to do, but as opposed to Naru, who understands her place in the ecosystem, he's just imposing his way of hunting onto a foreign land. He's forcing a square peg into a triangular hole, or whatever. Yeah, he can get by for a while just naturally being physically superior and having advanced weaponry, but eventually his ignorance of the landscape and Naru's instincts and knowledge is what gives her the advantage and what causes the Predator to ultimately lose. It's in the tagline of the film. They, the Comanche, hunt to live. It, the Predator, lives to hunt. Even the French fur traders Naru and her tribe come in contact with are almost a reflection of the Predator himself, while also an antagonist within the same story. The Comanche and Native American tribes in general only really kill for food and resources. No part of the animal is wasted, and they have a sacred bond with the animals, the environment, and the ecosystem. It's all built around respect. The fur traders only view the buffalo, for instance, as a means to get rich. They skin the animals and leave the rest to rot, similar to how the Predator doesn't really care about who or what it's killing. He's just killing and collecting trophies for his own vanity and his species' sense of conquering worlds. But Prey is also about Naru coming of age, of fulfilling her dream of becoming a hunter. If you look at Naru's journey, it's one of overcoming every single obstacle that would prevent her from becoming a hunter, starting with the skepticism of her tribe. She uses that as fuel to motivate her, to prove them wrong, to prove her worth. She faces the elements, some of nature's most formidable creatures, human invaders, her own people, and finally the Predator. Not only is it a journey of proving herself as a true warrior, as a grown woman, but one of self-discovery as well. She's skilled in different ways from her peers. She makes up for her lack of physicality with her resourcefulness and intellect. That doesn't mean she's incapable with an axe or a gun or a blade or whatever, but that she has to operate differently from most other hunters in her tribe or on the battleground. In fact, her unassuming demeanor and perceived helplessness is precisely what Naru uses to her advantage in taking down the Predator. She's seen as bait by almost everyone, including the French colonizers, and by the end, she proves her strength, that she isn't simply a helpless victim, that she is a warrior, a hunter, capable of extraordinary things, even if she has an unremarkable frame or whatever the fuck. The Predator, who's just by nature an arrogant antagonist, has the hubris to overlook her, and it's that exact mentality that is his undoing. I guess Prey essentially comments on a parallel idea to what the original film does, which is that physicality, brawn, is not everything, and it doesn't mean anything if you don't have the brains or the experience. Naru messes up a lot. She makes a ton of mistakes, gets into near-death situations, and has to fight her way out of it. She's a fighter. She has been a fighter her whole life. This is just the next step in her maturity. She's someone who learns from experiences and is able to use that in her showdown with the Predator. Insecure little douches might whine about the moment where Naru affirms her desire to hunt because the rest of you say that I can't do it, as being some sort of woke thing or whatever, but I mean, come on, those people are idiots. Really? I don't understand where you're coming from. Don't listen to them. This isn't even necessarily a story that deals in gender. You could have easily placed a male lead in this role and you could have an equally successful film. The character just happens to be a woman. And if you see that as being woke, then I think maybe you need to look in the mirror. There are tons of coming-of-age movies about boys and girls alike whose central conceit is that the main character has a dream. They have figures of authority and or mentorship in their lives who try to convince them that they can't accomplish it, and that main character then proceeds to not only achieve their dream, but shoot light years beyond it. Naru doesn't just become a great hunter. She comes into her own as a person, as a woman, a grown adult, and as the next leader of her tribe, because this tribe now respects her. They respect the journey that she's gone on, one that pitted her against impossible odds, and one that forced her to hone and utilize her skill set to the fullest in order to survive. But if there's one final thing that I think cements Prey as a vital part of the Predator franchise, it's that it's not beholden to any of the other films. Yes, there are the call forwards. If it bleeds, we can kill it. Is maybe a little egregious on paper, but in execution, it's a really awesome moment when Naru's brother says it. Yes, they didn't need to set up the flintstock pistol from Predator 2, but it's done really tastefully and something that doesn't draw attention to itself. In fact, if you had never seen Predator 2, you could still walk away from this film going, wow, that was a great, compelling story. I was moved in that pistol. I mean, who the f cares? But overall, even if none of the other Predator movies had ever been made, perhaps the biggest reason Prey might be the best of them all is that it still could have feasibly been made in its exact current form. Yes, being a 300 years earlier prequel helps it in that department, but it still nonetheless is a Predator film that gives us everything we want from a Predator film while outwardly existing as its own piece of media. It's the legacy follow-up I've repeatedly asked for on this channel, and Dan Trachtenberg fucking delivered it to me. So in summation, Predator is one awesome motherfucker. It might have been robbed of a chance to be seen on the big screen, which, again, look at how gorgeous this movie is. It clearly deserved to be seen in the theater. What the fuck? But that doesn't mean you should deny yourself the chance to experience its brilliance or that you shouldn't give it a chance. If you come out of it still insistent that the 1987 original film is the best and can't be topped, fair enough. And honestly, there are probably days where I'll agree with you. But even if you do, I think it's pretty easy to see the ways in which Prey enhances the larger franchise and why it's the Predator sequel we've been waiting for 35 years.